This video has one purpose only, and that is to show how to take a bitmap image and get it to the right size for your or my web application. So the assumption here is that this was like a photo shoot that you did of a package design or a project that never left Photoshop, which is pretty unlikely for graphic designers because most graphic design projects have text, which means that it would end up in Illustrator or InDesign. Now, the next thing is you need to know what the pixel height in width is that you are shooting for. In some classes, I will have given you that. If you're a web designer, you probably have figured that out with some experimentation. Very important that you know which is the width and which is the height. They're not interchangeable. The width typically is given first, and it's typically shown that way in menu options in Adobe's programs. The next step is you want to make a backup copy of the image because most likely we're about to reduce it in size for the web, which is going to be destructive editing. So you want to copy. So I'll go into my folder and do just that. So what I would do here at this point is grab this image and let's say, for example, right click on it and go to duplicate. Give it a name that makes sense, maybe letting me know that in the near future I'll probably be able to delete it. Like for export, for web, whatever. And keep in mind, this is for Photoshop documents, JPEGs, TIFFs, PNG, doesn't matter. Anything that you can open in Photoshop except for Illustrator images. We have a totally separate procedure for dealing with Illustrator projects. Okay, so we are going to open this in Photoshop. So we are all the way here to the steps. We're going to open it or look in image size, which is a top menu item in Photoshop. So we go to image size. And if the image is not already at 72 pixels per inch, we want to make sure that resample is unchecked. Change the resolution to 70. So uncheck resample, resolution to 72. Once we've done that, now we check resample. We change inches to pixels. We make sure that this height width ratio lock is locked so that it looks like this, not like that. Right? We want to see that little bracket surrounding there. And then one of these two options will work every time. That's the good news. It's like a step-by-step process. Don't skip a step and it will work every single time. So we're going to change the width to the width that you were given or the width that you figured out. So let's go with 1000 by 500 pixels. So the width in that case is 1000. We go into the width, and what we're going to see happens is that when we change the width, the height changes with it, and then we just have to look at this, look at the height, and answer this question. Is that height the same or less? And most likely it'll be less, it's very rare that it's exact, than the height that you're going for, which in our example is 500. So the answer is yes. It matches the width exactly because we put it in there, and the height is either, in this example, 500 or less. Yay. We are done. We are ready to move on to the next step, which is saving. Now before we save, let me show you an example where it's much taller than wider. Okay, you're going to follow all the same steps. You're going to get to this step where you go to image size. You are going to look like it's already 72 pixels per inch, and resample's already checked, so we're able to move on to this step. Put in our width. Let's use 1000 by 500 again. Well, 1000's already there, so we can go to the height and answer this or ask this question. Is this equal to or less than the height I want? No, it's much bigger. So that doesn't work. So then I have to follow this. If not, change the height to your height. Okay, so that's 500. So we go in here, we put in 500, and again, resamples checked. This thing is checked, so we have the bracket. We're going to put in 500, and we're going to see the width change with the height. And then we don't really even have to go this far if we've done everything right. But in for just to make sure we got it right, we are going to say, okay, is our width now the width that we were going for or less? And so really the answer has to be yes. And sure enough, our width, way less than 1,000, but that's as big as it can be. So we're good there. We click OK. Let me just show you one more example before we get on to the saving. The reason I'm showing you this third example is I don't want you to get into the habit of thinking, well, I always go whichever one of these numbers is bigger, and that's automatically going to be what it is. So let's keep with the 1,000 by 500 example. So you might think, oh, this is 1,400. It's definitely going to be 1,000 wide. Don't jump to conclusions. Just follow the logic. Do the same thing again. So we're already at 72. Resample is checked. Let's put in our width of 1,000. And ooh, that didn't work, did it? So it's not an automatic. And that's because this one's kind of boxy. So then we go to step number 2, which is changing the height to our height and making sure that the width is equal to or less. So is the width equal to 1,000 or less than 1,000? Yes, it is. We're good. So now all 3 images are ready for the saving process. The only exception of these being ready to save is if you are in a web development class and we are doing the fix where we want to always make these the exact size that you have in mind with a background. So those of you who don't need to do that, look in the mistakes section of the table of contents of the video, and then you can just jump ahead to saving. But for those of you who need to make this image work in a particular size all the time and with the background, here's what you do. So we'll start with this one while it's up. We are going to go to, instead of image size, this time we're going to go to image canvas size. Now, what we need to do is uncheck. If relative is checked, we're going to uncheck it. The 2 things we must know here is what our height that we are shooting for is and what the background color is. So first of all, let's go ahead and throw the background color in here. I'll use this little drop down, go to other, and then I will paste in my hexadecimal color, click OK. We also want to make sure that the anchor is right in the center. So if it's anywhere else, you're seeing anything other than that dot right in the center, make sure that's changed. And then we are going to put our height, in this case, back to the original number. And I'll show you one where it's taller, so you can see in that case we would have to change the width. But in this case, it was just putting the height back. So if 1,000 by 500 is the example, in every case before we leave this canvas size, it's going to be with relative unchecked, width of 1,000, height of 500. We click OK. Got exactly what we need there. In the case of a super tall image, we're going to have the height matched, and we're just going to change the width back to 1,000 with our color in there. It's going to look something like that. And then for this last one, it was the width again that was off. Those of you who do not need the background, you have rejoined with us for saving. So the process for saving, luckily, is pretty darn simple. So I'll start with the most complex, which would be saving a Photoshop document, just because a couple more options come up. But keep in mind, this is a Photoshop document, has multiple layers, even some layers that are turned off. We don't care. As long as it looks like what we want right now, then we are going to go to File, Save As. We are going to navigate to the folder that we want the image to be saved in. We are going to make sure that it's named properly. So if you were just turning this into me, you would name it your last name underscore first name underscore some type of a description. If it is for the web class, you just want to put it in your images folder and make sure that it has a name that makes sense to you later when you're fishing for it. We want the format to be a JPEG, and that should be it. We click save, and we want the image quality to be maximum. Format options baseline standard is perfect there. We're going to click OK. So let's do one more of these. Let's take this one, file, save as. Again, navigate to the folder, give it an appropriate name, format JPEG, click down on save. Brings you into this again. Make sure that file is at maximum, baseline standard, all good. Going to save the third and final one. Save one more out here for the non-web class people. So in your case, everything is the same except for the name that you would give it. Last name underscore first name. Same thing, go to the folder that you want it in. Okay, so now the next step is going to be to test these in Photoshop. So I'll test this one first. What helps here is close everything down that you have. We don't have to worry about saving because we already saved out the new stuff and we made backup copies of the old. In fact, these ones won't even ask us to save because they were started as JPEGs. Okay, so let's navigate to the folder and check. The idea of double checking these in Photoshop before you turn them in or put them on your website is just to make sure you get what you're expecting. So we're going to go ahead, open this image in Photoshop, and we're going to do the F key test. Just make sure that just by hitting the F key, it's up to 3 times to cycle through. A lighter background, a darker background, and a black background, that there's no white showing through. And then we go to image size, and before we do that, we ask ourselves, what are we expecting to see? Well, based on the examples I did with 1000 pixels by 500 pixels, I'm expecting in this case to see something that's 1000 pixels wide by less than 500 tall at 72 dpi. And that's exactly what I got. That's exactly what I want. If you're in the web design class, then what you're expecting to see is something that's exactly your size. And when I say exactly, there is that 1 pixel leeway that we have, but that usually doesn't come up. That only comes up when we're going from Illustrator. Let's see, so let's check one of these. And so we will just right click, open with Photoshop. And so we're expecting to see the background in there, and when we go to and let's do the F key test just to make sure that looks right. And then when we go to image size, we are expecting to see, like I said, within 1 pixel of that exact size. And the only difference is because we added a background around it.